Hey there, I'm Suscovich, and since 2013 I've raised between 1,000 and 2,000 broilers for meat, broiler chickens for meat on pasture. I now have to decide in 2018 what breed I want to raise, how it makes sense for my farm, and what are the factors that go into that decision-making process. Just so happens, that's what today's video is all about. So here's my important disclaimer before we get started. Don't focus just on the numbers on this video. Focus on the process. What are the things I'm talking about? How do they affect how I'm going to manage my birds? How do they affect my bottom line? If you drill down on my exact numbers, they're going to change. They change from farm to farm. They change from person to person. Your feed supplier could be different. Your feed costs, your labor costs. You could be just doing it for completely different reasons. And all of those things tie in to why you make this decision in the first place. And it's not about my exact numbers. It's about the process and how they apply to you. Also keep in mind that this video doesn't really cover the philosophical side of why Cornish cross versus Red Rangers versus dual purpose heritage breed birds. We're not getting into the production versus heritage debate in this video. If I did, it'd be like 50 minutes long. You wouldn't watch the whole thing, and it's just the way the internet works. So today we're gonna cover the numbers. If you wanna know more about the philosophy, if you wanna have that discussion, leave it in the comments section below and I'll cover it in a future video. Ooh, this is a good topic for the whiteboard. Let's go over there and do some math. Let's go over the labor, the feed, and the pros and cons of raising the different breeds of chickens. To help us make this decision, we're going to go to the pasture poultry packet number 1, the economics of broiler chickens. In this packet, I walk you through every question you're going to want to answer to get started with raising chickens for meat on grass, and also we break down all the economics. So we're going to go over to page 1-4, and there's 3 breeds of broiler chickens that you can raise: the Cornish cross, the Red Ranger, or the dual purpose birds. We're going to use this sheet, the numbers on this sheet, to help me make my decision today. So when we're calculating our labor costs, there's a whole bunch of things we have to consider. Setting up the brooder and getting it ready, and then cleaning it up when it's done. Setting up the chicken tractor so they're ready for the birds in the field. Actually moving the birds from the brooder to the chicken tractors. Processing day, administrative work where you're ordering the chicks in the beginning, you're doing your bookkeeping and tracking along the way, doing inventory if you're doing fresh birds, frozen birds, who are they going to, how are you going to store them, how long do you have them on farm, and then marketing is another expense that not everybody takes into account, but that takes time. But there's one key performance indicator that we want to have, and that is, because we're trying to decide between 3 different breeds, all of these are going to be the same for all 3 breeds. Because they take longer, it's the daily chores where we're really going to see a difference. The first thing we're going to go over is the weeks to maturity, or that really gives us our labor calculation. That's our first key performance indicator, or KPI. So with Cornish cross, these are your production white birds. This is what's typically used in barn systems and has been adapted to pasture poultry systems as well. After about 8 weeks with the Cornish cross, you're going to have about a 4-pound carcass. Depending on how good your management is and your feed and all the other variables that go into raising chickens, you could have 5 or 6 pound chickens at 8 weeks. You could have smaller birds. We're not going to get into that. We're just going to round numbers say after 8 weeks, we're going to have about 4-pound finished, dressed out, no feathers, no guts carcass. Now for me, I raise batches of 240 birds. My daily chores take about 45 minutes a day. So at 8 weeks, that's about 42 hours. And if you factor in a labor number about $15 an hour, it's $630 of labor for that whole batch of 240 chickens. So when you do the math out, $630 divided by 240 birds is $2.63 in labor per chicken. Now the Red Rangers, because they're more active, they take 12 weeks to get to that same 4-pound carcass. So you have 8 weeks with the Cornish cross, and you have up to 11 or 12 weeks with the Red Rangers. Now at 12 weeks with about 45 minutes, remember 45 minutes is our chores time. 45 minutes a day, that's a total of 63 hours. We're going to use our standard number of $15 an hour for labor. That's a total labor cost of $945 for a batch of 240 birds. Now we're going to take that $945 that we're paying out in labor, divide it by all those 240 chickens, and we get $3.94 per bird. Now with our dual purpose heritage breed birds, they take roughly 15 to 16 weeks, so it's a lot more labor to get to that same 4-pound carcass, and the meat quality is going to be a little different. We're going to get into that in a few minutes. But 16 weeks. Now it could differ depending on breed, it could depending on your management styles, but 16 weeks is going to be the number that we're going to use, a round number, just to figure this out. So if our daily chores are 45 minutes, we know that gives us, after 16 weeks, about 84 hours of labor. Using our standardized number of $15 an hour, that batch of 240 chickens is $1,260 for all the labor for your day-to-day chores, not including all the extra special stuff. So when we're going to break that out, we get 1,260 divided by 240 birds is $5.25 per chicken that it's going to cost you in labor if you're raising it for 16 weeks with the dual purpose heritage breed birds. So if we're going for the same 4-pound average finished bird, our Cornish cross at 8 weeks costs us $2.63 in labor. Our Rangers at 12 weeks cost us $3.94 for the same 4 pounds. And our dual purpose birds at 16 weeks cost us $5.25. Let's move on to feed, because that's going to make a difference, because as these birds are alive longer and they have different mannerisms, they're going to consume and process feed in a different way. First, let's discuss what my feed costs are, what I'm feeding, and what feed conversion ratio is. Now, while my farm is not certified organic, my feed that I buy is certified organic and non-GMO. If it's organic, it usually is non-GMO. I make that difference because you can buy non-GMO but not organic, but if you're buying organic, it's non-GMO by default. I feed organic non-GMO. It's about 3 times more expensive than conventional feed, and my costs are going to reflect that. So if I'm buying feed in at around $23 per 50-pound bag, so there's 40 50-pound bags in a 2,000-pound or 1-ton pallet, I have $23 a bag. That breaks out to about 46 cents per pound for me for feed delivered. That goes up and down depending on where the market is, but that's what we're going to use for this exercise. For our feed conversion ratio, or FCR, you can use 2 different ways, or you can calculate it in 2 different ways. You can either have the live weight or the carcass weight. It's how much feed did that bird have to eat to produce that live bird, or because you're not selling the entire live bird, you can see how much feed a bird had to eat to have that carcass weight. And because we're going for 4-pound carcass across all of our birds, it's going to be the carcass weight, not the live weight, that I'm focusing on today. Just because it's a metric that'll be fun for you to know. If you're processing birds, the processed finished weight is going to be about 70% of the live weight. So if you weigh a live bird, you figure you lose about 70-ish% when you process. Now for the Cornish cross raised on pasture, the best I can determine is they have a feed conversion ratio of 3.5 to 1. So that's 3.5 pounds of feed to 1 pound of meat produced, and this is finished carcass weight. So if we take that 3.5 pounds times 4, because we want that 4-pound carcass, that gives us 14 pounds. Now 14 pounds of feed times 46 cents gives us $6.44 feed consumed per bird for the Cornish cross. Now for the Rangers, they move a lot more and they live longer. Because they're moving more, they're foraging more, you get a lot more chickeniness in the meat, but their feed conversion ratio goes down because you figure people who are active are usually a little skinnier, they burn more calories, so they're eating more feed. So to 5.2 to 1, 5.2 pounds to 1 pound of meat, we have 5.2 pounds to get us to that 4-pound carcass. It gives us 20.8 pounds of feed consumed times 0.46, or 46 cents a pound for feed, gives us a total feed cost of $9.57 for the Red Rangers. Now for the dual purpose birds, they do forage a bit more. They take a long time to grow and they grow nice and slow. They have about a 5 to 1 conversion ratio, best I could find. So 5 times 4 is 20 pounds of feed, 46 cents, $9.20 for those dual purpose birds to keep them fed to get us to the same 4-pound carcass weight. So summing up our feed here, Cornish cross is about $6.44 in feed per bird, Rangers are $9.57 per bird, and dual purpose are $9.20. And remember, these numbers can change depending on your variables, depending on the accuracy of my information. What we're getting out of this exercise is the exercise itself, the fact that you should be doing this math and calculating out your expenses so that you can work towards profitability, whether it's for your homestead or for your farm. Now for our Cornish cross, there are definitely a lot of pros when it comes to production. They are fast growing, they have really big breast meat, which as Americans, that's what we're used to eating and seeing in the store. They're highly marketable, that goes into big breast meat. There's a certain type of chicken that society has just gotten used to, and the Cornish cross, because it's the bird that's raised in barns conventionally, bringing it out on pasture is raising a productive breed in a more healthy and sustainable manner. They're also more predictable. I find less variability with the Cornish cross, where you can get some unpredictable behavior and growth rates in some of the other birds. And that just may be from my own inexperience, but this is definitely some of the pros from what I found from my experience. Now there are some definite cons to that come with the Cornish cross. They grow fast, they eat, and they produce a very predictable, marketable bird, but they have a higher mortality rate both in the brooder and in the field. Even the best poultry managers still suffer from a higher mortality on Cornish cross than they do on the other birds. They have common defects, genetic maladies, that if you're breeding for fast growth, if you're breeding for any one particular trait, you're going to have some side effects, and that definitely comes into play with the Cornish cross more than the other birds. They're more easily stressed out. They're a less resilient bird. If you think about it, they've been bred to live in barns and have a very controlled environment, so when something goes wrong, they don't adapt very well. And compared to the other birds especially, they have a poor foraging ability. They can get maybe 5 to 10% of their nutrition from pasture, and they can do well on grass, but compared to the other two, they're poor foragers. Now some pros for the Red Rangers: they have a much lower mortality, sometimes as low as 0% mortality for being raised out in the field. They're a more resilient bird, they're more active, they're more prone to get out of harm's way. If your management practices are on point, you can have a much lower mortality than, say, the Cornish cross. They are faster than the dual-purpose birds at 11 to 12 weeks, so that 4-pound carcass weight versus 15 or 16, but they're definitely slower than the Cornish cross. Because they move around more, there's more blood flow and there's more dark meat in the Red Rangers, so there's more chicken flavor because it's been more active, more blood flow, and that results in that more chickeny flavor because the meat's a little bit darker. And because they're more active, they are better foragers. They can range and go out and find stuff and get more bugs and more grass, and you can manage them a little bit differently than you manage the Cornish cross. Now some of the cons with the Rangers: they do take longer to grow out. You're looking at 12 weeks, which we went over. They eat more feed and there's more labor. So that's something you have to think about if you're going to go in the Ranger route. They have smaller breast meat. They're more narrow along the front. And because they're more narrow, they don't have as much padding. And when they go up to eat at the feeder, they get what's called breast blisters from either sitting on the ground or rubbing against the feeder or water. If your feeder or water is not at the right height, they develop a little scab or blister right along the keel bone, and that has to be trimmed out under USDA standards. You don't want that going out to the customers. And when those are trimmed out, they have to take a little piece of skin with it. So you're going to lose a little piece of your chicken, which makes it a less marketable product because then it has a hole in what would be the top of it when you're looking at it at the store. So it's something to think about and manage for. Because they have a more pronounced keel bone with the smaller breast meat, they're prone to breast blisters, so you may be looking at parting out more birds or splitting them in half. By cutting it up, you slice the whole bird in half and you can get rid of that little trimmed out area. Now some pros with the dual purpose heritage breeds birds: really low mortality, but let's put a big but here. Love the but if 16 weeks, that's how many months? It's 4 months. So you have these birds for a long time. So while they may have a lower mortality due to genetic disorders or feed issues or weather or whatever, you may have more opportunities for predators to kill them. They may have more opportunities for a freak weather occurrence, whether it's heat or a thunderstorm or whatever. So the longer you have the birds, the more likely it is something is going to happen to them during their lifespan, which will either need to prolong their lifespan or will end it through some tragic accident. So we'll leave that butt up there. They have more depth of flavor. With that depth of flavor is going to come a little bit tougher meat, but we'll get into that in the cons. But you get more chickeniness, and those people looking for real gourmet stuff, if you want a more classic chicken, your depth of flavor is right here. But we're getting into the soup bird category with these. So yeah, we'll get there. Dual purpose, so if you're a homesteader, having these for both meat and eggs, if you don't care about the way it looks or whatever, if you're not trying to market this anywhere else, but you do want to supply your family with a more resilient meat supply and get some eggs out of it, they are dual purpose. And because they're around so long and they're active and just the way they behave, they are the best foragers, I would say, out of the three. So some of the cons with the dual purpose heritage breed birds, if you're trying to do it as a business, they have the longest grow out. When the longest grow out, they have the highest labor cost. They're the most expensive. You might be able to finesse your management to accommodate for that, but for me, you know, this is a red flag right here. Red flag. They also have the toughest meat. So the meat being a little bit tougher comes from the activity. They've been living for 4 months. They've been growing a little bit slower. They've been very active. They're running around, and that gives you a tougher bird, which you're going to have to do some customer education if you're trying to sell these things, that they may not be the best roasted in the oven. They may be better cooked as soup or in liquid braised, you know, something to break down some of that tough muscle fiber. Now, to sum it all up, and hopefully I'm not leaving anything out, but our two key performance indicators of feed and labor, let's kind of add these things up. With the Cornish cross, $6.44 plus $2.63 and $9.07 total. With the Red Rangers, $13.51 total. And with the heritage dual purpose breed birds, $14.45. And now this is just feed and labor. It doesn't take into account all the other expenses that go in with raising chickens. Let's just clean this up and compare the three. So if these are our base costs, let's just say that this one is 0. This is our starting point, our Cornish cross, because it's the lowest. And let's figure out the difference that raising a Red Ranger or heritage breed bird makes from the Cornish cross. So if I were to raise Red Rangers to the same batch size and same finished weight over the Cornish cross, it's going to cost me about $4 more per bird. With the heritage breed birds, it might cost me $5.38 more per bird. That's money I have to make up somewhere down the road. So after all that, you probably guessed that I'm going to go with the Cornish cross. In 2018, I'm raising Cornish cross chickens. They're the white production breed. They're going to be a little bit more efficient for me. They taste really well. They're very marketable. For me, I'm all about raising a productive breed in a more healthy and sustainable way. Say what you want about ethics and trying to make a change and raising Cornish cross versus heritage breed versus the Red Rangers, but for me, I gotta stay in business, and you have to beat the game before you can change the rules. So I've chosen the Cornish cross as the bird that I'm gonna raise in 2018, and I used my poultry packet to help me make that decision. Now, your feed, your labor, what type of bird you're gonna raise are not the only things you have to consider when you wanna do this for a homestead or for a business. If you're doing it for a homestead, maybe you're trying to convince your partner or just making sense of it for your family to budget what you're doing. Or if you're doing it in a business, you got to know the numbers, otherwise you're going to go out of business. Now, remember, these are all on sliders. You can change what your feed is, what your management style is. As you get better through the years, all these numbers can change, but you need to have a starting point. You need to be organized. You need to track, and the first step in doing that is starting out with a pasture poultry packet if you don't know what you're doing, and it'll walk you through all the decisions you have to make to get started and all the costs that are associated with raising chickens. Now, and tomorrow on the Hops episode, we're going to go over the soil test that I took earlier this year. And then next week on poultry, we're going to go over my chicken processing options, how I process my birds, where do I have to go to take them, kind of what my whole shebang is, and some of the decisions and things that I've made along the way. And like all my stuff, it's not how you should do it, it's how I do it, and take from my experience whatever you want.